listen, I'm going to keep going until you either tap or pass out or something breaks. You need to be the judgment of when you've had enough. Ultimately, that is, because a lot of times, especially for competitors, I don't compete anymore, but for competitors, it's crucial to keep, have that point of like, I have to shut this down. Because if you constantly being nice to people, what's going to happen in the tournament? The guy's either going to fake tap and you're going to say, well, he tapped, no, I didn't. Or he basically just accepts the pop, whether it's a major pop or a minor pop, that's a separate issue.
Welcome back to the BJJ Fanatics podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Ford. My guest today is a 4th degree black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu under Master Renzo Gracie. He's also a No-Gi Pan Am's adult black belt bronze medalist and a 2007 Naga Masters world champion. He's also a European Masters absolute champion and a European Masters lightweight silver medalist. He's also a Grappler's Quest Masters lightweight gold medalist, and he's a world-renowned instructor and runs 2 successful academies, one in Saddlebrook, New Jersey, and the other in Butler, New Jersey. He's also got affiliates all around the world. Ladies and gentlemen, making his 4th appearance on the show today, my good friend, Professor Karel Silverfox Pravec. How are you today, Karel?
Good. Thank you for having me on. I always enjoy these talks.
I do too. I really enjoy it. In fact, it's been longer than usual. We usually do these a little more frequently in the past, but it's been a couple of years since you've been on. I think 2022 is the last time I interviewed you. So what have you been up to in the meantime?
Well, I do a lot of traveling, especially in the summer. I do a lot of camps. So that's one of my passions and I really enjoy them. I try to expose people to not just the world of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and techniques and sequences, but also sort of have them see parts of the world that they may not be able to attend or would not be comfortable attending by themselves. If somebody wants to go to a big city like Rome or Paris or London, it's easy. There's big infrastructure, but, sometimes off the beaten track, people don't go so much. So that's what I've been doing. I've been developing an app to kind of try to keep updated. So on BJJ Fanatics, when we upload or when we do a big instructional, it's like 4 hours of everything I know about that topic. And then I try to keep it updated as well on a regular basis with kind of shorter updates and, teaching, traveling, and training. That's pretty much what I do. So I'm lucky enough to be able to do that with my hobby.
What are some of the parts of the world that you've been, some of your favorite places you've visited recently? And what are some places that have surprised you with the level of jiu-jitsu that they have?
I think, the jiu-jitsu world, and I think BJJ Fanatics deserves a lot of credit for it, I think is developing very fast. Unlike sort of when I started back in the early 90s or in New Jersey, at the time there was really very little material available online, or I don't even know if online existed back then. But long story short, it's now, anybody that has some really special techniques or something innovative, people get to see it very, very quickly, both from free sources on YouTube and so forth, but also paid sources. BJJ Fanatics has a huge library of technology and techniques, and I think that's where there's been such a huge change in jiu-jitsu in the last 10 years. So I see when I'm traveling the world where maybe 10 years ago they were quite far behind in terms of their jiu-jitsu development, they're catching up very quickly. Me personally, I love warm weather and water and mountains, and my favorite camps I do in Holland and Czech and Italy and Sicily particularly. That's one of my favorite. In Costa Rica, that's also one of my favorites. In Germany and so forth. So I love to visit people all around the world, and I kind of show them my jiu-jitsu, show my technique, exchange views, exchange techniques, and also kind of. The best part about the camps is you wind up hanging out with people after it or before the sessions, whereas the seminars, it's great, but it's only jiu-jitsu. After that, everybody kind of goes their own separate ways. So it's kind of favorite way of mine to sort of disseminate information.
Well, what a cool position you're in to be able to do that, and I'm sure people are loving the camps. I mean, because obviously you get to train jiu-jitsu and you get to visit new places. There's a lot of cool things about that. So that's really neat.
Yeah, we get a lot of repeat campers, so to speak. It's kind of funny we talk about adults as camping, but sometimes sometimes it's a little bit more rustic, and so a lot of times it's a 4-star hotel with beautiful pool, private beach. So it could be anything in between.
You have another one coming up in Spain, right? You have one coming up in September.
Yes. Yeah, it's going to be September 7th through 13th. So it's 7 days. It's actually, this is probably the most reasonably priced. It's got great value because the price includes everything: the lodging, the BJJ, and the food. And I'm doing it with 2 other black belts, Kenny Kim from Madmade and Kemal Verhoeven from Henzo Gracie Holland. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm sure we're going to see a lot of old friends and hopefully meet some new ones too.
That's cool. That sounds like a fun time. Karel, I'll tell you what, man, I wanted to pick your brain today. The last conversations we've had were really popular, especially with the 40 and over crowd, because we really dove into that aspect of training and knowledge that you provide. I'd like to talk with you today about the topic of avoiding injury to yourself and to others. Now, obviously things happen in training and injuries occur that really aren't anyone's fault necessarily. But do you think that generally speaking, a lot of injuries that occur could have been avoided?
Yeah, it's a big percentage. I don't honestly know whether it's 20% or 50%, but there is a large portion of injuries that could be avoided. So there's kind of flukes or true accidents where it's just things happen. But a big portion of injuries, I think, are sort of where there's a mismatch in intensity. I believe that is probably one of the greatest culprits for injuries. People just don't seem to understand. They kind of, we talk about lack of ego and so forth, but the reality is it's BS. There is ego. Everybody has it. It's just the question is, how well do you control it? On the mats, and obviously in competition, you shouldn't, but on the mats, you should try to control it and try to kind of match the intensity of your training partner. It's a skill that people need to learn, and I can't tell you how many times. And I know I'm looking at friends, and I'm, a lot of times I call them out because I know how they train, and I'm like, man, do you understand? This was your fault. This was not the other guy's fault. This was your fault. So you come out, especially you get an older practitioner, and I think you really need to distinguish the older practitioners, or middle-aged practitioners between almost 2 groups. Guys that started late and are kind of, at the early stages of their journey, be it white belt, blue belt, or even purple belt, or guys that started 20, 30 years ago, but they've put on a lot of miles. But they already have the skill and standing within the academy. It's a lot easier for those guys that have sort of the standing to sort of say no to people that believe that would not be good training for them, or if they feel that, at least protect themselves and ramp up the intensity immediately, so that way they protect themselves, and then the other guy might get injured. But the other group it's a lot harder, because you have somebody there, like late 40s, 50s, or 60s even, and they're sort of training like meatheads, like idiots. I had a guy in Sicily camp, and I just literally every single day I called him out. I tried to talk to him nice, called him out kind of, with this look like, you're an idiot. And I'm not getting through. And, the guy is a 3-stripe white belt. He has injuries up the yin-yang, and I don't know if he's going to last because, he just cannot train. And no matter who you put him with, it just he does not understand that, okay, this is the time for me to try to play a technical aspect of jiu-jitsu versus, it's like you're not in a fight for your life here. Sometimes you are, and when you are, you got to go accordingly. But a lot of times you're not, and you need to train accordingly. And I think that's one of the most important skills for guys to get, and also to choose their training partners carefully. I think a lot of these guys, you can't put them with women because they just go crazy and they have a lot of strength relative to the woman. It's a very, very important aspect that I try to explain to people, but it's very difficult to get through.
Yeah, it definitely can be. Unfortunately, there are a lot of people out there that just have a hard time accepting defeat, and they don't want to tap because in their minds it means they lost, even if it's just a training session where you're not really losing.
Yeah.
It can be very frustrating for a student who's willing to tap if he's caught, but then has his partner not willing to tap if he catches him. And it can kind of lead to kind of a moral conundrum about what to do in that situation. Like, do they apply the finishing mechanics and force the guy with the ego issue to accept, potentially causing him to be injured? Or do they tell themselves, okay, I know I got this. I know I would have landed that. I'm just going to move on and not hurt this guy. From the perspective of someone who's putting this type of person into checkmate and not getting compliance, what do you advise?
Well, to be honest with you, I think, sometimes, it's also not good for training for you because some people have that extra sort of room left to survive that. And if you practicing to, get to the point of a tap that point depends heavily on who you're going with. It depends on their skill. It depends on their sort of flexibility. It depends on their sort of how deep are the karates and so forth. So a lot of times I just keep going I'm telling the guys, like, listen, as I'm applying, I usually slow it down at that point. I'm like, listen, I'm going to keep going until you either tap or pass out or something breaks, because I don't know. You are the judge. You need to be the judgment of when you've had enough. Ultimately, that is, because a lot of times, especially for competitors, I don't compete anymore, but for competitors, it's crucial to keep, have that point of like, I have to shut this down, because if you constantly being nice to people, what's going to happen in the tournament? The guy's either going to fake tap and you're going to say, well, he tapped. No, I didn't. Or he basically just accepts the pop, whether it's a major pop or a minor pop. That's a separate issue. So I really feel very strongly about these aspects, and I try to educate my students about this. And like I said, I try to talk to people and give them advice, because I've been doing this for a long time. And, I'm hoping that you get through to people, but I just do not understand how somebody that is, goes, training with a woman that's 40 pounds lighter than him, and he thinks he's in the fight of his life. You need to make that a chess match. You need to make it more of a my technique versus your technique. That's a productive training. Otherwise you could have a woman that's, been training 10 years, 5 days a week, 120, and you could put a guy blue belt with 180. There's certain laws of physics BJJ cannot overcome, and people get ranked based on their technical abilities, not based on their toughness, durability, and so forth. I mean, that is a small aspect of it, especially for competitors. But again, the skill acknowledgement by the belts is based on technical abilities.
Like I said, it is kind of a moral conundrum for some people. Like, some people don't want to hurt anyone no matter what. And some people are like, hey, I want to apply my jiu-jitsu and make sure it's working properly against someone who's fully resisting. And if this guy's being an idiot and not tapping, it's kind of his problem. And it does seem like there are some people out there that, like, they do have to kind of suffer consequences sometimes in order to make those adjustments. Like, I think that, if you're someone that just refuses to tap no matter what, man, eventually you're going to get hurt. And I think that most schools are set up in a way that they're ran responsively, and a lot of people don't ever experience the full capacity of what a submission like a joint lock can do. But man, you get your heel hook, you get stuck in a heel hook one time and your knee pops, you're going to have a newfound respect for the knee, for the ankle, for the heel hook, and when to tap, and what your limit is.
Yeah, it's a kind of a very interesting topic, and I think it's very difficult to convey to people. When you explain to them the things, they just kind of nod their head. To be honest with you, also, it's unfair to their training partners, because their training partners kind of lose confidence in the technique, even though they probably would have had it if they just keep pushing a little bit further, or they just feel bad about it, and therefore they're learning bad habits. Like, when I'm getting close, I'm letting go. And that's a bad habit. You do that, 30 times, guess what's going to happen if you actually need this? You're going to let go at a critical juncture. So I believe that it's really like, this is one of my, these people are truly bad training partners, and they should learn to become better training partners, because number one, it's easier for them to get better in jiu-jitsu quicker, number one. And number two, they have a greater variety of training partners that want to train with them. And the reality is I believe that a lot of these people quit ultimately because, you put them with somebody durable and strong and bullheaded just like they are, they're going to break something. They're out for 3 months, come back, and then the same thing happens. Now it's 2 injuries. And, after a while, they're like, I don't want to do this anymore. And, the reality is, if you're fully fresh, fully rested, you haven't trained in 2 weeks and you go in like a bull in a china shop, that's great. But you understand that the guy you might be training is like on his 30th straight session in 30 days. They're working on a skill acquisition. But if you tap him purely by physicality, I don't believe, unless this, you want to test yourself, that's what tournaments and fights are for. That's where you test yourself. Not sort of like, I smashed this woman's face into the mat. I've seen that as like, what are you doing?
Yeah, it really is absurd. I've seen people, I've seen, thankfully not too many people, but I can think of some people in my head that I've seen go harder with people smaller than them and with women. And it's like, dude, what are you even trying to prove right now? Like, what's your deal? You know? But let me ask you this. I remember as a purple belt watching 2 really high level leg lockers rolling, and it was a good competitive roll. But something I noticed is that neither of them actually applied the finishing breaking mechanics of the leg locks. It was almost like both guys caught each other too, and it was almost like they were tapping before it was even necessary for the other guy to go through the breaking mechanics, and they caught each other multiple times. No one was hurt. The lesson I took from that is watching them roll is the importance of learning to recognize when you're in checkmate. What are your thoughts on that?
I agree with that. I think it's very important for people to know, but it has to be real. But there are times when this is done, and I know that on my side too. If I'm the one applying the pressure, I know this is done. I literally will slow down, literally to almost a crawl where I. First of all, it makes my technique better because what I do is I go to the point, and if I apply another, half an inch, that's a break. I pause. The guy recognizes they're done. What I do that is lighten up on the submission and allow him to escape in a technical manner, which now forces me to follow up. And that teaches you how to sort of do sequences, string moves together in case you're that half an inch too late. So in the long run, this makes you better. I think that so people, when they do rolling, they do catch and release, which I don't really like. I think it's kind of like, okay, I want to get to a point where like, I look you in the eyes and I'm like, is there anything you could do about this? No. Okay. Then I lighten up, and that gives me, and now I'm going to follow up to where he goes after the escape. And that again teaches you when, you're going with somebody really good or somebody really fast or flexible, and you miss that submission by half an inch, guess what? Now I know what to do in that case.
I really like that line of thinking. Yeah, because like you said, at the end of the day, you want to make sure that your technique is sharp and effective and reliable. But at the same time, if it's not, you want to also have those options drilled into your psyche, knowing, okay, if this fails, where's my next step? What's my next link in the chain? I think that's awesome. It's awesome that you do that.
Yeah, that's one of the most important things. I think a lot of times people, forget. We focus on positions and sort of submissions and kind of techniques, which are a very important aspect of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. One of the biggest things that people tend to, I believe, understate, and I think it's a very important aspect for people to train. I think the way you train, the methods of your training will help you understand it better, is the opportunities for submission or dominating positions are created in the transitions. I think it almost rhymes. I should put that on a t-shirt or something. But again, let me say that again. The opportunities for submissions are not static. The opportunities for dominant positions are created in the transitions. So it's also important, especially when people get to a higher level, blue belt, purple belt and above, is to not just train sort of like throw your hips up and slap on a triangle, pull the guy's head into your crotch. A lot of times they get beaten because the guy just, as you bring the arm across, the guy postures up, he's gone. By the way, I addressed that issue in the BJJ Fanatics triangle video. But you need to then transition, like, what is your backup plan? You always have to have a backup plan. And you need to kind of not just, as you get higher in the ranks of jiu-jitsu, you need to sort of start to practice the transitions as much as you do sort of in the more static scenarios. So they're not fully static, but a little bit isolated.
How do you best do that? Is that done usually through specific training, or is it just something you're mindful of in your normal day-to-day roles?
Like flow rolling to me is kind of sometimes gets a bum rap, but I think, you need to have a weekly schedule of how hard you roll. Usually the guys that are the knuckleheads that we just talked about, they just kind of roll hard. They usually do two days a week because their body is fully healed, they're fully fresh, and they go balls to the wall because they don't need. They're feeling good about themselves. Like their body feels good. Now, if you're training 5-7 days a week, your body's in perpetual state of being banged up. So you have nothing but to rely on but technique. But, when you flow roll, you lower the intensity, okay, but not the precision. So a lot of times when people flow roll, they just kind of flop around. I think flow rolling is very understated. I usually try to flow roll at least 2 days a week out of the 7 days a week that I train. And, have maybe 2 or 3 kind of harder sessions per week. That's it. Then the rest is flow roll or solo drills and stuff like that. But one of the most important aspects is when you flow roll, you lower the intensity. You sort of lower that the intent to kill, but almost when you catch a release, you want to work your transitions, the smoothness of transitions, the precisions of applying the technique, the angles. And also, once you get there, if you feel confident, like literally, I will pause at that time and say, what can you do now? Can you do anything in your mind right now that would get you out of this? I give the guy almost a few seconds to try to rip out anything. Nothing. Okay, then what I'll do is I'll kind of lighten up and then let them continue as if they kind of beat me to that submission and escape. And then I have to follow through. And I think that's a good way to sort of really hone your transitions. Last couple of years, so I've really been focusing on efficiency of grips, because literally if you go on one side and you have this grip and versus this grip, it looks the same to an uninitiated eye. It makes a massive difference what level of danger do you put that person in. And that also dictates their response. So if you put them in very little danger, their response could be multiple, could be very sort of almost doesn't leave you any other options but to reset and go back to neutral. And if you apply a more efficient, effective grip, suddenly, the guy has only one option. It's either tap or suddenly only one option, and you know how to head him off at the pass. So that's what I've really been focusing, the efficiency and effectiveness of grips. Make sure I'm very precise. My angles, especially that's very important. Arm bars, especially leg locks. On constriction placement on an application of pressure on the carotids versus kind of just squeezing mindlessly. And the transitions. And, basically what happens is your game doesn't have to be fast because it is so efficient.
It's really interesting that you talk about the importance of spacing out your intense days of training, because that's something I've been looking at a lot in my own schedule as well. In fact, I just recently had my friend Shintaro Higashi on the show, and he was talking about how the methodology that the Russian judokas used to use. He said that a lot of their training, because they train several hours a day, is actually very smooth and not intense at all. Like it's a lot of like fit-ins and repetitive movements and very light, almost non-resisting grip fighting. And he explained that by doing that type of training in between really intense sessions, it helps their development a lot. You mentioned the idea of flow rolling and also solo drills. What are some other methodologies people can use to train light and smooth in between those intense days, but still get a lot of benefit?
Well, solo drills are a good way. Grab a good partner and just drill, but don't just drill the entries, drill the transitions. I agree with the methodology. I to be honest, I don't know firsthand, but I was also told like in wrestling in some of the Russian republics or former Soviet republics, that it's the same sort of approach to wrestling, because, if you're going to be thrown on your head or every once in a while that angle is off, and it does produce, it's either minor injuries or sort of your body is banged up. You cannot have that state all the time, because eventually something will start to, those minor injuries become major injuries. But you need to also, the question is, how do you manage that process without, so some people just take the attitude, I'm going to do this 2-3 times a week because I need to let my body recover. I believe that is a bad approach, because again, you kind of go in recklessly when you're fresh. You're okay to get tossed because everything feels good until the next day. And the next day, 2 days, you take off. Whereas the guy that kind of takes the approach is like, okay, I'm going to try to focus on my technique and make sure that if I'm going to get launched, I get launched in a way that hurts less, and I'm going to be able to continue from there in a not necessarily in a bad, it's a bad position, but maybe you get an underhook, suddenly you're on the guy's back. And it was somebody starts to work on that. And in between, they try to kind of train for skill acquisition, as opposed to sort of like, I want to do good today. I want to beat this guy. That's what tournaments and fights are for again. I believe that in a period of 2 or 3 years, there's a massive skill difference between those two approaches.
I could definitely see that. Yeah, I mean, I could definitely see that. I also love that you're pointing out the idea that there is a mindset that goes with only training a couple times a week intensely, and that is that, hey, I only want to show up when I'm feeling my absolute best and when I'm feeling, on point and fresh. There's obviously a lot to be said for training completely exhausted too. Like if there's days that you're just, completely cooked. I mean, your survivability in jiu-jitsu, and if you are a competitor, especially your ability to really have your technique and your game sharp when there's nothing left in the tank, is something you have to develop in the training room. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I just wanted to also say, I think, like John Danaher's produced some of the, biggest sort of winners in the world of jiu-jitsu today. And, those guys train 7 days a week. Again, you need to kind of mix the approaches together. But sometimes when you get when you get to that point where you exhaust it, it's a very important part of training, especially, if you training for competition. You need to survive. You need to be able to sort of harness whatever you have left, even if it's nothing, to still keep fighting and keep come back. There was a very funny story about Renzo with Roger, with ADCC. There's a video of it on Instagram where, Roger was in a match with Kakareko, and basically 40 minutes they went at it, or 20 minutes. I forget the exact. I believe in the final it was 20-minute round, and then they have 2 10-minute overtimes. And he goes to Kakareko and says, "Congratulations, man, my brother, you did so great. You survived, and now you got to do it. Just suck it up. You got to do it for another 20 minutes." And you could see like Kakareko's mentality sank. That just shit. I thought, but there's something to it that you need to just survive. And I remember this is probably 5-7 years ago. I took morning class with John. I trained hard. Then there was competition class. I trained with, for about an hour and a half with, Gregor and Igor Gracie and guys from the Henzo Academy. And then I stayed for Dave Branch, who's a very good grappler in his own right, comes in and says, "Hey, you want to train?" And I just had nothing. I said, I got nothing, but I'll stay. And he just mauled me. But I got my Irish up, and I just refused to tap. And that's an important thing of training. But basically, I realized, and sometimes my guys do that to some of my guys on my roster that, especially the guys that fight or compete. And I remember another guy did the same thing, but except he did it on a long-term basis. What happens when you come in exhausted and you just try to survive on a day-to-day basis? Guess what your game is going to become? It doesn't become about me going after the other guy. It becomes about you surviving. And the mentality changes dramatically. So it needs to be a bit of a blend. You need to be able to survive and kind of tough out those hard days, but you cannot also do it for 10 days, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, because your game starts to change from an offensive to a defensive game where you just kind of try to survive. Your objective that day is to survive. When you go fight in a competition or an MMA fight or a match, whatever you want to call it, your job is to win, not to survive. So you need to kind of balance those approaches. You will have a rough day, and those are very important because they tend to isolate. It's either you need to sort of maybe have a little bit of rest. For me, that after that day, I trained in the pool for 3 days, and I felt great because it's a good training for recovery, solo BJJ drills. Or you basically take a day or two off or 3 days off, whatever you need, or you change your routine. Because you cannot do this medium term, because it will change your game.
That's excellent. Yeah, I could definitely see where if you're not careful, you could fall into the realm of like being really passive with your game. If you're only thinking, man, my goal today is I'm exhausted, I'm just going to try to survive. I could see it being really valuable to do that, but also, like you said, you don't want to make that your main focus as you're coming in each week.
That's your main training, and now your game becomes that.
Exactly. Yeah. Very well said. Karel, there's something you said earlier I meant to circle back to. You talked earlier about the importance of picking training partners and choosing your training partners wisely. For people out there listening that feel like they might be in a position where they don't necessarily get to select their training partners, what advice would you give to them to, I guess, avoid people that could hurt them or avoid people that they aren't comfortable rolling with, if the instructor is the one that's usually selecting who to roll with?
All right, guys, let me listen to me very carefully because this is when it comes to standing. A senior rank in an academy can usually choose their training partners. They know a lot of people in the mats. They know how they are and so forth. So it's a lot easier when you have standing. But at the beginning, it's very difficult. And you depend on sort of your training partners to be good to you. And your instructor should also pay attention. If there's a mismatch or somebody that kind of goes after you and tries to hurt you, or if you have a guy, sort of a 28-year-old, kind of juice head, for lack of a better word, just started 6 months ago, was like wearing tank top in the academy. By the way, you should not wear in training. You need to have sleeves, guys, because if you're ever going to do north-south choke, nobody wants to have that in their face. But always picks up like the 130 pound guy that started a year and a half ago, who's a blue belt, but it makes him feel bad. He puts a beating on a blue belt. Or he picks out the females. The school needs to rectify that. The instructor or the other senior members of the academy, they need to rectify that. You need to, when you come training, sometimes the instructor, I usually tell people who to go with. I try to pair them up well. But if I see like the person gives me this look like I don't want to go with this guy, then I immediately like, okay, never mind. Because you need to pay attention to that, because we have this kind of policy in jiu-jitsu in where like anybody asks you, you need to say yes. Anybody, you could ask anybody. I think it's bullshit. Can I say that?
Absolutely, you can. Absolutely.
It's bullshit, because people have a variety of circumstances. When somebody walks into your academy, you don't know what's going on in their life. You don't know what injuries they're dealing with. You don't know if they're like on their 18th training session in the last 2 weeks, or what is, they are overworked at work. They just finished their, third 16-hour days in a row. So you need to be cognizant of this, guys. This is not like, oh, I asked you, therefore you must say yes. No. It's a mutual consent. I strongly believe in this. And, if ultimately people have to be in an academy that they're comfortable in and that allows you to thrive in a long-term basis. Renzo has this great saying, people wind up where they're supposed to be, and maybe if you're getting hurt all the time, you don't enjoy training, guess what? You're either going to quit or you're going to have to leave. So, take that into account. Is if your instructor is not, if sort of the academy vibe, atmosphere, or sort of the way they treat people is not in sync with what your goals are, you may need to move on. Otherwise, you're going to quit, and you won't be part of jiu-jitsu, which is a wonderful thing. I like to think that in my academies, in my affiliates, we've created an atmosphere where, the heavy duty competitors can coexist with the hobbyists, and they try to help each other out. And I believe that is the best type of atmosphere you can have. When you have that sort of rough and tumble mentality, those, the funny part is they think they're tough, but, show me their results in competition scene. Show me sort of what students of note have come out, or instructors of note have come out of that environment. You're gonna see nothing.
Yeah, really well said. Karel, obviously jiu-jitsu attracts all different kinds of personality types. One type it attracts a lot of is introverts. There's a lot of people who are very introverted people who come into jiu-jitsu. What advice would you offer to an introverted white belt who hasn't quite dialed in on the social intricacies in jiu-jitsu on the mats, when it comes to declining a role? So if someone calls him to a role, higher belt, someone he's like, man, every time I roll with this guy, he cranks the shit out of everything he puts on me. What would you say to that person if they don't have, I guess the experience that someone higher ranked might have already developed?
That's a good question, and you don't have to be honest. The guy doesn't deserve honesty. People that deserve honesty get honesty. People that don't. So you may say, listen, that he's coming off an injury, or, that she's not rolling today, or she's like, you got a stomach ache. Well, just have a couple of ready-made excuses. Hopefully the guy's not dumb enough to realize that after, you give them 3 excuses and then they see you rolling with somebody else, that they get the message that maybe they don't want to train with you. And eventually you can bring it to the attention of the instructor or one of the senior members of the academy. Say, guy, listen, I don't want to be a wuss, but every time I train with this guy, I can't move for 3 days. How do I deal with this? No, and again, this is a good test too, because if the instructor says, I'm sorry, I really didn't notice. First of all, if it happens on a regular basis, the instructor should eventually notice. But maybe they didn't notice, or it's happened a couple of times, but they didn't notice. They're going to say, don't worry, I'll take care of it for you. And, but you say, hey, Joe, go with Mark over there. So kind of head it off at the pass. Or, if the instructor said, well, suck it up, twinkle toes, then, you're probably at the wrong academy.
Yeah, that's a great answer. Yeah, but both those things you said, I really like that a lot. I like the idea of having some pre-made things to say if someone doesn't quite in the moment know what to say. Just have some pre-made things. Say, man, I kind of tweaked my leg or whatever. I'm going to sit down for a minute and then go with someone else. But also, I think really important the communication with the instructor. The instructor, the one that's guiding the class, has to be aware. Otherwise, if you don't say anything, there's no way for him to help you if he doesn't know, if he's not as perceptive as you are. The way that you observe your students and stuff. So that's really,
yeah. But even a perceptive instructor can sometimes miss it. Just if the person, if you got a big class and you kind of didn't notice it twice, that might, maybe he's paying attention because he's thinking about promoting 2 guys that day, and they kind of wants to evaluate their level, so he's paying attention to their roles. But if it happens 10, 15 times, that's for sure should be noticed. But maybe even should be less. The reality, I'm not trying to make excuses, but I'm just trying to say, but you should not wait too long, because if you really feel like this is kind of going south for me, talk to them earlier rather than wait till it's only been 3 times.
Absolutely. Yeah. And most instructors will do exactly what you just said. They'll do it in a way that doesn't really raise any flags in the other guy's mind. Like, hey, actually, you know what, Joe, why don't you go with Steve over here? Cause I want you guys to work together over here. Or, they can do it in a way that doesn't make it obvious that, hey, you said you don't want to roll with this guy. So that's, very good, man. Karel, I'll tell you what, we've reached about the halfway point of the show. You already know what to expect because you've been here 4 times. This is where we play the pummel game. It's a game I play halfway the show with every guest. Some of these questions are about jiu-jitsu. Some of them have nothing to do with jiu-jitsu. But if you want to play for the 4th time, I'd love to play this with you.
Sure, let's do it.
All right, I added a few new questions since you've been on. Question 1, what's the largest animal that you think you could beat in hand-to-hand combat?
Probably... Well, a mastiff, maybe?
A mastiff, okay, yeah, cool, okay.
I don't know. Yeah, well, there's some guys that beat pumas, but they didn't have training. I think they just kind of got lucky where they scared the puma when they attacked them. Yeah, that's a tough question. I may need to think about this one.
I know. I appreciate large dog though. I think large dog is realistic. Yeah, for sure. It is interesting when you see people. Yeah, when you hear stories about someone that like fought off a mountain lion or something on a trail. It's just like, damn, dude. Like, what did you do? Like, they need to make it instructional. We need how to fight off mountain lions from BJJ Fanatics. That'd be a good one.
Maybe small black bear.
Small black bear. Yeah.
Large dog or small black bear.
I love it. If you found a genie lamp and you could get 3 wishes, normal genie rules apply, so no killing people and no wishing for more wishes. What 3 wishes would you choose?
Oh, man. I think if there'd be more kindness in the world, I think, especially towards the weaker people and animals. Health for everybody, that's good. Third one, I don't know. Maybe an indoor pool.
I love it. Do plenty of your water-based drills for sure. Yeah. That's awesome. Good wishes. I like those. Here's a brand new one. I haven't asked anyone. You're the first one to receive this question on the pummel. Have you ever had a supernatural experience?
I don't know what would qualify for that, but I had a kind of one of. I didn't play golf too many times, but I had a friend, kind of a mentor that we, when I was in finance, we were playing golf, and he was supposed to be there, but he passed away the night before. But a couple months before, he told me, Karel, you need to buy these clubs. They're on sale, Tommy Armbar, which is apparently a good club. And that day, I hit a hole in one. So I don't know if that's would qualify, but that was something kind of amazing because I'm not, like I said, I only play golf to get away from the office and outside and whack the ball and drive the carts.
That's incredible, man. That's really well. Yeah, absolutely. Could have been your friend's energy sending that your way, man. Who knows? That's really cool. That's really cool. What do you think is a secret talent that you have?
Boy. Secret talent. I think I'm a good judge of character, although a lot of times I run afoul of kind of like, okay, I don't like this guy or I'm thinking, but maybe I'm rushing to judgment. Let me see how this goes down the road. And usually I'm right from the beginning, but you got to give people a chance.
Yeah, that's great. That's an awesome, excellent talent for sure. What's something you wish you were better at?
Jiu-jitsu.
I always add the caveat. It's funny. The one time I don't add the caveat, I get jiu-jitsu. So yeah, besides jiu-jitsu, something outside of martial arts I wish you were better at.
I'd like to have more patience, I think.
Nice.
So I'm the nicest guy, but once I run out of patience, it gets ugly very quickly.
That's awesome. Good one. What do you think is your favorite bad food to eat? Favorite junk food?
Oh, I don't know if it qualifies. I think I made the same answer the last times is pizza. I love pizza. I literally in my life, I used to say I have never met anybody that doesn't like pizza. I think 10 years ago, I met one guy that doesn't like pizza, but that's still it.
Yeah. And that one guy was probably on your list of bad character. You could probably sense he was an evil person from the very beginning.
And if he wasn't, he was probably right after that answer.
What's your most hated food? What's something you cannot eat no matter what?
I'm like a bear. I pretty much eat everything. It's kind of funny. I like vegetables that are kind of raw. I'm not too fond of like green peppers and broccoli when they're cooked. I don't know why. I can't think of anything that I just would refuse to eat right now.
Yeah. I feel you on that. Some of those vegetables get really mushy. It's like a texture thing for a lot of people, or, if you cook them too much, especially like peppers, they get really like soft and mushy. It can bother people. What do you think is, who do you think's your favorite MMA fighter of all time?
GSP.
Good answer. How about pure grappler?
Wow. That's a long list, to be honest with you. Hodger Gracie is on that list. I really, I really partial to like Gary Tonin, especially some of the newer generation. I really like the Ruotolo brothers game. I like Joseph Chen's game. I like Mika Galvao's game. I like the guys. I like Marcel Garcia's game. So it's a pretty long Damian Maia that I think, that really made it amazing sort of, run, for almost for the UFC title. But that's one guy I wish that, that it would have been really cool to see him as a UFC champion. I believe he deserved it. I think maybe just the timing didn't quite work out. But Damian Maia has an amazing jiu-jitsu, especially for MMA. That's a very long list. Gordon to me is also, especially among the heavier weights, he's just so dominant. It's technically just so much better than the guys at that level. I like Craig Jones' game too. He's got very, very cerebral game too. That's a lot of the guys I like. I'm sure, if I thought about it a little deeper, I would come up with more names. I like, Bodoni also has an amazing game, especially for a guy that, I like guys that just, they have a broad game where, you no matter what you defend, if you think that he's going to hit you with this, they can hit you with something else.
Yeah, great answer. Yeah, pretty much every name you named is on my list as well. So, yeah, really good choices.
I'm sure if I kind of thought about it a little bit longer, I'm sure I could probably come up with another 10 names. GSP to me is one of those guys that, really is an ultimate martial artist. He just truly was training for improvement, and, he's retired, but still kind of trains to make sure that, he's excited to see new techniques and try new things on the mats and constantly training. That's a guy that really is doing martial arts, I believe, for the right reasons.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I've always kind of in my mind separated, like in the world of MMA, the fighters and the martial artists. And I think that both names that you mentioned, Damian and obviously GSP, both have always fallen into that martial artist, like lifelong pure martial artist side of things. Yeah. What do you think is your biggest phobia?
Pass, because
I don't want to think about
I'm going to punch somebody in the head who takes advantage of that.
All right, fair enough. How about
I don't like mice.
You don't like mice? Is it mice? Yeah, is that it?
Well, I don't know if it's the biggest one, but it's up there. But I just got to warn anybody who sneaks up behind me with a mouse. I'm going to punch him in the head.
You're going to get
jiu-jitsu comes in after.
You're going to get guillotined into oblivion. So yeah, don't do it. That's not safe. What do you think is your most embarrassing song or band that you secretly like?
Oh. Well, I like classical rock, so I don't know if that's embarrassing enough in general, because, most of my students kind of listen to I don't know what it's, hip hop rap, so to speak. And you can see that, you can hear them literally, they can't hear anything anymore because they damaged their hearing so much, because you can hear them coming to the academy from 3 blocks away.
The bass, yeah. That's great. No, classic rock's awesome. Who are some of your favorite bands?
CCR.
Nice. Yeah.
Rolling Stones got a lot of good stuff. Led Zeppelin, it's basically the classics.
Awesome. Yeah. Creedence is my dad's favorite band. He followed them since forever. So I grew up hearing all their stuff. I still love it. It's excellent. Yeah. Really good music. What do you think is your prized possession? Something material that you own that means a lot to you?
I try not to get attached to material things.
Nice.
Yeah, I think pretty much anything material can be replaced, or, we don't need it. So, yeah, I think I'm just going to give you one of those, one of those answers. I really try not to attach myself to material things.
I like that. That's good.
If I don't need it, it's still good. I try to give it to somebody else.
That's awesome. If you were made leader of the world, what's the first law you'd make?
Stop posting political opinions on Facebook and Instagram. Nobody wants to hear it.
That's a good one. I like it. Yeah.
You want to convince people, set up a milk crate and start talking. People have a debate in the park.
I'm someone that's not a fan of politics myself either, so I appreciate that one. What do you think is your favorite superhero?
That's a good question. I don't think about it. I'm not too crazy about all the, like I like to still watch some of the, I like Spider-Man. I like Batman. I don't have like a true favorite.
Well, Spider-Man and Batman are awesome though. Those are two great choices for sure. Yeah. The fact that you mentioned those, that's good enough. If you could have a superpower, what superpower would you want to have?
I'd like to be Jiu-jitsu man.
Jiu-jitsu man. You're already Jiu-jitsu man. I argue that you are Jiu-jitsu man. You travel the world, you spread the art, you have camps, you run 2 schools.
I just need a cape.
You just need a cape. Someone out there, so one of these gi companies, put together a cool cape for Karel. That'd be awesome. What do you think is your? Did you play video games at all? Have you played?
No,
not really. Not into video games.
No.
What do you think is? What do you think is your toughest match in competition you ever had?
I fought Cabrinha twice, 2008. I mean, obviously he was at that time, that was his prime, and he was in his peak. But I actually enjoyed. I remember when I took third place in semis. I went against Cabrinha, and guys like, oh man, it's tough. They had to go against him in the semis, and I always kind of thought for myself, man, I got to go against a guy in his prime, and I'm in my 40s, and at least hang there for a while.
Yeah, that's awesome.
But the toughest ones, to be honest with you, where I probably at least I could generate some things. I went against Alexander Ciccone in absolute in the worlds one time, and he was, I think, heavy, and I was lightweight. I was a little bit older than him, and I could not do. I was on the defensive from get go. Somebody called Henzo, and it's like, Henzo, there's some old scrawny guy from your school, and Ciccone can't dispatch him properly, and Henzo was like, that's Karel Pravec. But long story short, I mean, he put me away, and afterwards he kept coming to me and saying congratulations. But I was very frustrated with that, because I couldn't even put him on defensive even for a few seconds. So that was kind of like, of course Cabrinha beat me soundly, but by the same token, at least I could generate things. I could not generate anything. Like from get go, I was just fending him off.
Yeah. That's a tough situation when you're stuck in that cycle of just defending and not able to get anything going.
That's just a matter of time.
That's hard. Yeah.
Before you tap.
That's tough. Yeah. I think we've all experienced that for sure, man. That's a hard thing. If you could go travel in history and meet any historical figure from any point in time, who would you have liked to meet?
Probably George Washington. And I think I may be repeating the same names, but probably George Washington, because I think, he could have been king of the United States, and we'd be, who knows who would be right now if it wasn't for him kind of saying, listen, we've had enough tyranny. Let's set this thing up differently. Well, Churchill, especially like I'd be curious to know what was going through his head when literally things were crumbling around him. The U.S. was nowhere near entering the World War II. And somehow to rally a nation to stand firm against Germany. Benjamin Franklin, I think I don't think he was on my list before, but Benjamin Franklin would be a very interesting character for me to sort of talk to as well, and just kind of get at a better understanding of, he was an inventor, he was a politician, he's one of the founding fathers, he was, also a diplomat that was, beloved and kind of, cemented the support that France threw behind the United States before, that made us kind of win the revolution, at least, supported the win in the revolution. I think that would be another interesting person, for me to talk to. Some of the, I think it'd be kind of interesting, Alexander the Great, I kind of like, the mentality of just kind of like, okay, I'm going to be in perpetual war. I'm not quite sure how that came about. And, you know, kind of some of the Roman emperors, like, you know, assuming that they could not just have me, you know, behead me or something, but I'd be like, what are you thinking here? Yeah. You know, you got all this power and you got this empire that's pretty amazing, well ahead of its time. And instead of doing something even better with it, you kind of basically go off the deep end.
Yeah, those are, man, great answers. I also like the reasoning behind why you'd want to talk to each of these guys. That's really great. That's really awesome. If you could pick 4 faces to put on Jiu-Jitsu's Mount Rushmore, what 4 faces would you put?
Why don't we, I mean, you know, Carlos and Helio, I think need to be, at least one of them need to be on there just because, you know, they're the founders of the art. But I'd like to just kind of put them aside because, you know, almost because that's almost like a given. So I think maybe after that, it should be maybe Holtz, Hickson. I put Renzo on there just because what he's done with jiu-jitsu, and I think he's shown a lot of people that jiu-jitsu is just not just a tool for fighting and kind of, you know, learn the techniques and so forth, but it's basically a tool for sort of you know, self-improvement. Really can become a positive influence in many people's lives. And I'll probably Hodger. You know, I think, you know, they probably would need to create a couple more people on there because I think 4 is not enough, to be honest with you. I think the 2 founders have to be there, but now there's only 2 slots left. So if you kind of take those 2 slots away and kind of give it to sort of look at sort of the more recent generation, there's a couple people that could be there or should be there pretty soon, but because they've sort of where they've taken the world of jiu-jitsu and sort of their winning ways.
That's great. I love that. Yeah. It's definitely hard to narrow it down to 4 because there are so many people that have contributed in so many ways. So, but I think that for the 4 you selected are excellent choices. You said earlier that one of your secret talent is that you're a really good judge of character. What do you think is the most important characteristic a person can have?
I think, to be honest with you, I'm like, I get violently angry when I'm dealing with people that try to sort of take on the weak, be it people or be it animals. That to me is literally, that's a black and white issue. There is no gray area, you know? So
bullies is what gets to you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the best characteristic to them would just to be someone that has empathy and to not pick on someone weaker than you. That's a great answer, man. Yeah, I'm right there with you. Final question for the pummel game, Karel. If a zombie apocalypse breaks out right now in New Jersey, what's the first thing you do?
Move out of New Jersey.
Bail. Probably a good start would be to bail. Yeah.
I don't believe in God. Well, I have one, but I've never fired it. So I don't know. I don't watch enough of those movies to know how to deal with them. But if it breaks out in New Jersey, I have to watch, some of the movies or shows that show you what you got to do, I guess. But maybe just collect the people that are important to me and move to somewhere else before everybody becomes a zombie.
I think probably going like upstate New York or something like that, something a little more rural where there's less population would be smart. But it's getting out of the city would be the struggle, right?
Well, fortunately, I'm in the suburbs of New York.
Oh, there you go. So you're halfway there. Not too bad.
Yeah.
And Karel, that was the final question for the pummel game. Congratulations. You win again. You got your double underhooks. So Karel, man, let me pick your brain on arm bars, if you don't mind. So let's do it. Why is the arm bar such a crucial tool to have in your proverbial toolbox as a practitioner?
So I don't think, I am not like a specialist. I have very good arm bars. I have very good triangles, be it regular, reverse, inverted, ugly. I actually made a video with BJJ Fanatics too. Split guard. guillotines. I'm very good at chokes, rear naked chokes, head and arm chokes. I have very good knee bars and heel hooks. But one of the things that I really like about armbarring people is I have found that it requires more precision because people tend to be, obviously their arms are more dexterous than their legs. So you need more precision because people can defend it a little bit sort of more with finer escapes than they would with the legs. But it's a lot easier to break somebody's arm with my legs than it is to break somebody's leg with my legs. You really need to. I have found ways to just kind of continue to apply the pressure, even if the person bends their arm, to just make slight adjustment that literally keeps the person on the hook for the arm bar, but the break may not occur in the elbow, but in the shoulder. And again, that's on my video, guys, that with Fanatics will literally revolutionize your arm barring game. But I really, I remember like instances where I'm trying to heel hook a guy that played hockey on an international scale, like really elite level. He's a big guy, and I'm, as I'm doing this, I'm looking at his leg, and I'm like, what am I doing here? I just, hip highs past the guard and go for the arms. It's a lot easier break. So it's more difficult in a sense that you need to be more technical, but as far as the amount of pressure you need to generate, that's why I think arm bars are highly sort of underrated. The second point is that I like to make is, so people say that, legs are 50%, like leg locks are 50% of the human body. They're not. The reality is, if you look at the world of submissions, whatever the chokes account for in your game, you take that from 100 and then you divide the rest between arms and legs. So if you get 40% of your submissions are in rear naked chokes, guillotines, arm triangles, I would divide the remaining 60% between arms and legs. And that, could be 50% legs. That means you probably too focused on the legs. But what I saw in 2022 in the ADCC, so if you look at sort of the statistics, the submission statistics, right? So 50%, if you actually look at it, they're pretty consistent over the last 3 ADCCs, not qualifiers, the big tournament. About 50% of the submissions are rear naked choke from the back, or basically back choke. But that is usually, let's assume that person did not get the submission, they would still probably win that match, because usually when you get to somebody's back, it probably means you passed their guard, and you also probably, got to the back. So you're getting points. So when you're on somebody's back, generally speaking, sometimes you do, snap the guy down and take the back. It's fast. But usually when people get to other people's backs, it usually means that you're thoroughly dominating them, and you would have won whether the submission occurred or not. With arm bars, they account for about 25% of the submissions in the last 3 ADCCs. Quarter. That's a big percentage. But a lot of times, if you look at the matches, those matches are very evenly matched. There were, especially in the last ADCC, there were times where I'm watching, these guys go at it. And I'm like, man, I'm curious to see who's going to kind of pull ahead. And then the guy just 2 minutes later leaps into an armbar and finishes. So to me, arm bars are not just sort of a submission that you should sort of get from thorough domination, but also you get it from a position of sort of where things appear to be neutral between the two of you. Now, also, there's a third aspect to it. You can armbar people from the mount, from top side control. You can armbar people from half guard, bottom half guard. You can armbar people from your guard. So there's, the arm bars is a submission that can be applied also from a variety of positions. So again, I'm a very big proponent of arm bars.
Another thing I love about arm bars is it's a great means of creating dilemmas. Like it's a great way to let you were talking earlier about the importance of chaining things together when one thing's not working. I find oftentimes that, man, wherever there's a choke or a triangle, there's usually an arm bar nearby as well. If that's not working, what are your thoughts on using it as like another link in the chain in a dilemma that you present to somebody?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Like a lot of times when I attack an arm bar from my guard, it's pretty much over. It's just literally a question whether is this the first submission or is it the follow up? But you need to work on your precision because again, the opponent's arm, generally speaking, it can rotate 360, sometimes more than 360 degrees in sort of a rotational. They can bend it. They can, so you need to make sure you shut down all those angles of escape. But once you get very precise sort of arm barring techniques, and again, you could do it with a gatame, you could do it upside down, you could do it, straight arm bar. It's such a big world. And once you dive into it, it's such a good submission and very, very controlling.
What are some of your favorite techniques to chain it with? Or where do you find yourself most often connecting arm bars to when you're trying for something else?
Arm bar to reverse triangle. Both, whether I do a straight arm bar from the guard or with a gatame, almost always, the guy just dives forward and they wind up in a reverse triangle. The reverse triangle, again, for me, it's such a strong position. It's almost impossible. It's not impossible. It's almost impossible to escape. So generally speaking, when I hit somebody with an arm bar, and again, it could be, a regular arm bar or with a gatame upside down arm bar, razor arm bar, whatever you want to call it. If they beat it, they usually beat it by driving, pulling one of the arms out and diving themselves into deeper into my guard, and usually wind up in a reverse triangle because people don't see that danger, and from there they don't escape. I usually finish them with a sort of a reverse Americana. I'm sure it's on either the armbar or triangle DVD for BJJ Fanatics. And I'm sure it's, if you want a preview of that, I'm sure it's somewhere on YouTube that I've done it multiple times. But that's like such a consistent sequence for me. It's like, it works like a charm. I tell people, this is what is good technique. You train with high-level guys. They know what you're going to do to them. They cannot stop it. That day, that week, that month. Maybe 3 months later, they start to do something dramatically different and you can set up that sequence, but that is good technique. When you can hit things consistently. To me, a trick is something that you hit somebody with once and then you never see it again.
What do you think are some of the most common reasons arm bars fail? In fact, let me isolate that question a little bit because that can vary depending on where we're at. Let's say you're playing guard. When you see someone failing arm bars from guard, usually what's happening mechanically that's causing them to fail?
Failure to break to control the posture, and also usually the leg that's sort of the side that you're pivoting to is not high up under the armpit, but rather it starts to drift towards the hip. And number three is that you don't have to bring the leg over somebody's head to armbar somebody. My top lock armbar is literally gold. Guys, if you get this DVD, literally that's one technique that you got your money's worth. You don't have, if the guy keeps the head down, you don't have to bring the leg over because that's when they're waiting for the escape. That's usually when they yank out. You don't have to do that. And if you want to preview, I'm sure I've either done it with Bernardo on his channel or BJJ Fanatics channel or on my channel. You can see it, how it's done, and then dive deeper into it. But literally, those are probably the three most common mistakes people make.
Now, if let's say from topside, let's say that you've ended up in like a spider web position. What are some tips you give to people that are having trouble when they have a larger opponent who's like flexing their arm in or going palm to palm to prevent extension of their arm? What are some of the things that you like to do to get past that?
There's a bolt cutter. There's ways to break the grip. There's a variety of ways. One of them is to start, reach with the free arm to the other side. So first tip, guys, do not hold under the leg. Okay? Do not hold under the leg, because you need that arm for other things. It's far more important for you to try to control their posture, whether they're sitting up or they're sort of trying to sit up and then pull the arm back. I don't, when my guys or when I wind up in spiderweb, do not hold the leg. Basically, both my arms, one is firmly hooked in the arm, so there is no way that so one, do not hold the leg. Two, do not re-grip. Keep that grip that you have. And then a lot of times I reach with the free arm that normally would go around the leg or under the leg. I reach to the far side elbow and pull it in. What happens when the guy's, however he's locked up, when you pull it in, it starts to create this effect. And the arms start to get weak. And third is then you try to break it at the, don't pull at the elbow, at their elbow, pull it closer to the wrist. Again, there is a variety of ways to break the grip, but first, again, I do those three things before I do anything else.
One more question for you. The idea of chasing the armbar. So understanding how to follow the armbar when someone's rolling or trying to escape. What are some important concepts you think people should keep in mind when it comes to not losing position as someone's trying to scramble free?
Well, a lot of times, to be honest with you, like a lot of the arm bars require for you just to arch into the elbow, because a lot of times if it's so tight, the guy is just kind of rolling, he's making massive movements, and all you need is arch, because that's what would cause the break. People try to kind of move their hips and follow the arm bar, and in the process create an opening that now you lose the arm altogether. So again, sometimes it requires just an arch, but a lot of times, for example, I usually, Udagatame is one of my favorite attacks. And a lot of times the guy just kind of leaps over the head, and I don't chase him. He literally falls into a normal top side controlled armbar. All I do is just make sure adjust the angle with my legs rather than chase him. A lot of times in armbarring, when you chase them with your hips, that's when you create enough, gap in your legs that the guy just pulls his elbow and now everything went to pot. So there's a lot of subtleties to that you really cannot describe very well, without actually seeing it.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Well, guys, if you guys are wanting to learn more and improve your arm bars, Karel has one of the best sellers on our entire website. It's called Fundamental Armbar Mechanics. It's a really, really deep instructional. So if you guys are wanting to improve your arm bars, if this is an area you're having trouble with, or if it's something you're already pretty good at and you want to get even better, definitely check this one out. It's called Fundamental Armbar Mechanics. It's available right now at bjjfanatics.com. One of our best sellers. So check it out.
I'd like to ask the guys, if you're an advanced practitioner, meaning like a black belt or a brown belt or above, if there is something on there that you have never seen, just please comment on the video too, because I almost guarantee that there will be things, even though it's called fundamental, there is going to be advanced concepts as well that I almost guarantee that you've never seen.
That's excellent. Well, you guys, again, check it out, bjjfanatics.com. It's available right now. Karel, in closing, man, what are some of your major goals for 2024? But I know you've got your Spain camp coming up. Is there any other big goals for the rest of the year that you hope to accomplish?
Yeah, I have another camp in Germany in the winter, but I'm going to be hanging out by the pool and by the fire and teaching jiu-jitsu. I used to ski when I was I don't like the cold anymore. I'm basically trying to focus my teaching more on, I am very committed to my academies, but also I want to make sure that also get more of the instructionals out online, because I think that gives us a very big reach and gives us kind of the opportunity to help others. Guys, the reality is, if you buy an instructional, I don't know what it is, just pick a number, $99 for an instructional. If you actually play around with it, just think about what your monthly dues are. And if you can pick up just even 3 or 4 techniques from an instructional that work well for you, man, for me, it's well worth it. And the other thing is that I'm trying to kind of fine tune my camp schedule. I usually do 6 camps a year, and I'm trying to make sure that I do it in a way that gives people not just a chance to, train jiu-jitsu, but also see some interesting parts of the world and meet people from other countries. We just did a camp in Sicily, and we had 11 or 12 countries among the participants. So that's like sort of the things that I'm working on. And if you have a technical question, I do a weekly live show every Friday, 10:30 a.m. Eastern time. And that's a good time to ask sort of a technical question, because if you don't understand my answer, you can review live, or you got to be a subscriber to the Silverfox BJJ YouTube channel. If you don't understand the answer, or you have a follow-up question, you can ask and we can address it right then and there. So it's basically like a class where you have a chance to sort of figure out things that may have been troubling you or giving you issues for a while.
Yeah, and guys, if you haven't sat in on one of Karel's live Q&As that he does like that, you got to check these out. They're really, really good. And he's usually there with an uke to demonstrate things, so he can usually reenact exactly what you're talking about and break it down for you. So really cool service that you do for everybody, Karel. I think that's really awesome.
It's my pleasure.
Well, folks, unfortunately, we're fresh out of time. Karel, it's always a pleasure to get to pick your brain. You're always so forthcoming with your knowledge and insight, and it's always valuable. The listeners are always really stoked to see that you're back on the show. So I can't wait to do it another time with you for the 5th time next time. And you're always welcome back whenever you want to be here.
I appreciate it. Maybe for the 5th time, we'll have a cake.
We got to do it. Yeah, I'll buy one. You buy one. Then we'll have our plates here. No, you know what? Pizza, though. Pizza. Pizza.
Pizza, that's right.
We're pizza people. That's right.
It was my pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. It's always an honor. For anyone out there that wants to keep up with Karel, it's real easy to do so. He's active on all forms of social media under the same handle, Silverfox BJJ. As we mentioned, guys, his YouTube channel is awesome. He does a live show at 10 a.m. every Saturday. Or
10:30.
10:30 a.m. 10:30 a.m. So make sure you guys are subscribing there. Also hit the little bell icon to get notified when he adds new videos, because he adds new content a lot. His website is silverfoxbjj.com. That's where you can find all the information about his camps, his academies, and everything else he's got going on. Speaking of his academies, if you guys are ever traveling through New Jersey, he's got 2 great facilities. One's in Saddlebrook and the other's in Butler. So if you guys are ever traveling through New Jersey, make sure you drop in and get some training.
And I have one in East Hanover as well.
Oh, you have a third.
That's an affiliate.
Oh,
That's
an affiliate.
not mine,
Okay.
it's an affiliate.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
An affiliate in East Hanover also. So 3 options for training in New Jersey. Also, guys, he does camps all over the world. Next one's coming up in September, on September 7th through the 13th. It's going to be in Spain, just outside of Barcelona. So you guys get the information about that at silverfoxbjj.com. If you can't make it to any of his academies or his camps, you can learn from him anywhere in the world here at BJJFanatics.com. He's got several instructionals. All of his instructionals are our best sellers. He doesn't have a single instructional with us that wasn't a big hit. So anyone that you select is a good choice. Today we discussed in depth fundamental armbar mechanics, which is one of his best ones that he's put out. So make sure you guys go check that out. BJJFanatics.com. And that's going to do it for this episode, everybody. I really appreciate you tuning in. Please stay tuned for the next episode of the BJJ Fanatics podcast.